Aloha boys and girls, welcome back to yet again another video, and in here today we are going to be talking about all of the roster mania that has built up. It's finally ended. For those who don't like roster mania, it is finally ended, and we can kind of relax for a little bit of time until after Worlds is taking place. But roster mania has officially ended for right now. We're going to go over every single change that has happened. Now, if you guys want to kind of reflect and go over, in major detail every single thing that has happened, I will put a link into the 3 videos that I made kind of over this series thus far. We can kind of talk about, you guys can kind of like reflect back to those and maybe watch this one in a row if you want to, but I don't blame you for only wanting to watch this one if, if you feel like that. So what actually happened the other day, MLG, in preparation for World Finals coming up, they actually announced the 12 NA teams who will be competing in the official group play stages. They also announced 3 European teams and 1 Australian team, which we're not going to be talking about those teams today, but we're going to be talking about the 12 teams in specifics who made changes throughout these last couple of weeks, and we're also going to talk about some other notable teams who will most likely be in the pool play section as well. So we got a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of great rosters that have come out of this, and some rosters who did struggle. So we're going to kind of go over each team in particular, go over the changes that the rosters have made, and kind of give my brief overview of how I think the teams will do, moving forward. We're going to start off with a team who actually made a lot of changes. Actually, not a lot, but one in particular major change to their team, which was Elevate. The Red Rebellion did unfortunately make some changes. If you're a fan of the old roster, you got one new player who is a fantastic guy, Octane. So their current roster as right now heading into Worlds is going to be Slacked, Octane, Saints, and TJ Halley. Now, the previous player who they had in place of Octane was actually Classic. Classic provides a wealth of information. He's a great player, inconsistent at times, but is very strong. In the old roster for Elevate, they always had that trouble whenever they had Apathy on the team as well, with kind of finding like a main bow player, finding a main person to run the bow. They never really had that person. I know Slacked and Classic kind of debated on who was going to run the bow. I know Slacked has been running it for the most part, but now they have a designated bow player. Octane is one of the best bows in the game, and coming from Envy, that was a major loss for Envy and a major gain for Elevate. So if someone was to ask me, do you think Elevate got better, I would say 100% yes. I think Octane is a fantastic player. Not that Classic isn't, but comparing how their roles kind of clash and what this team really needed, they got exactly that, and they got a phenomenal bow player, probably top 3 bows in the entire game. And, like I said, that roster, Slacked, Octane, Saints, and Tej, a lot to work with, a lot of consistency now on this team. And they're looking like a very top team coming into Worlds. We'll see how they work out. Octane is very, very excited to be on this team, looking at his streams, his videos. He seems to be in very positive spirits moving forward, with his very talented team also. Now for our next team, it's actually going to be Denial Esports. The Wolfpack has actually made a 1-person change. We're going to talk about their roster currently, which is Hook, Temp, Slasher, and now Classic. We just talked about where Classic came from on Elevate, and he is officially on this Denial team. Pretty early on in roster mania, I want to say like maybe a couple days after Season 3 playoffs, Slacked had actually tweeted out and said, Nick, who is Classic, is leaving our team to go to Denial. Everyone was kind of confused about that, including myself. I don't really know how Classic is going to blend on this team, who was in place of Replays, who's now on a different team, which we'll get to. I thought that team was actually really good. I really liked the Denial team. Obviously, they played pretty well. They ended up getting to 2nd place at UMG DC. A very talented roster. Great young Slayers, along with a hardcore leader objective player as well. So, getting rid of Replays, you can kind of ask who's going to play that objective role. Classic necessarily isn't a objective-minded player. In Advanced Warfare, you kind of focus on who's going to play the objective role along with someone else. It's like you have 2 support players who kind of divide up the objective role for this game. Replays, fortunately for Denial, was the main guy focusing on that. He's one of the primary OBJs left in the entire game, where he kind of takes care of all of it. And so with the pickup of Classic, it's kind of like you don't necessarily have the exact same thing. It wasn't like they picked up someone similar to Replays. They picked up someone completely different. So I'm not sure how this team is going to work out. I think that they could get better. I'm not really going to make a for sure statement on saying whether I think they got better or not. It was a little bit of a strange pickup, in my opinion, for them to kind of directly go for Classic, but they might know something that we don't. And I know Classic and, Slacked were really good friends, so we'll see how this works out. It could be a really good team. It could, kind of fail, to be honest with you. But we'll see. They're definitely going to miss that leadership that they got from Replays. But Classic could provide a little bit more slang, which apparently they might need. Next team we have is actually going to be Opticnation, who was, definitely the first team to make roster moves. At least one of their players were. It was actually Mochilla. It was the previous roster was Mochilla, Embos, Ricky, and Miracles, and Mochilla was actually replaced by Nameless, who was actually from TK. We'll get to TK actually after we talked about Opticnation, but, you know, Owen's a very inconsistent team. Everyone will completely agree with that. You know, one event they'll place top 5, next event they'll place like top 20. They don't have the best placings in the world, granted, but they also have a pretty good roster. It's not a terrible team. A lot of people will kind of complain about the slang, which I agree with is a definite issue for them. And looking at their previous player, Moch, he was the main slayer for them. That's the main problem with, I think, this new pickup. You know, Moch was a major asset to the Opticnation team. You know, I think that Moch is definitely going to be missed in some way, but according to Moch, he said that there was a lot of things, like the team just didn't blend well together. He didn't fit with the roster, and as soon as they were out of the Season 3 playoff tournament, he just immediately said, I'm out of here. So Opticnation, who does rely a lot on Mochilla, has now picked up another BAL player in Nameless. So Owen, much like TK, which we'll be talking about TK in just a second, like I said, very based on chemistry. They're insanely based on how their chemistry works as a team. So in the pickup of Nameless, while that was, you know, they kind of filled the gap for their team, as soon as I saw that TK could possibly be making changes, I pointed toward Nameless. I said, he's the guy that's definitely going to go to Owen. It happened, but it wasn't that hard of a pick. Like, it wasn't like, oh, an insane, you know, insane, like, you know, prediction. It's the fact that Nameless fits really well with the ON guys, you know, good chemistry already, and he also fills the role of what Mochilla did, which was the main BAL player. Nameless also a BAL player. We'll see if this team works out. If anything, I think they got better for the fact that now their chemistry is more together. Mochilla was kind of, you know, he was a great player, don't get me wrong, but he just didn't fit with the team, which is a major factor as well. Some players can play with anyone and still do well, but a lot of the time players need to be around guys that, you know, like them, or, you know, at least have some kind of bond, and that's exactly what I think Nameless will provide to ON. Will this team last till after, you know, Worlds is over? I really don't know. I think they're going to have to make a change in some way. I do think ON got better. Not that Moch is better than Nameless or Nameless is better than Moch, but I think overall as a team they're going to play better now with Nameless on their team. But they're going to have to step up in slang if they expect to get any better moving forward. Now for the next team that we're going to take a look at is actually going to be Team Caliber. Now TK also made another change. This was definitely one of the most predictable changes, as well as Opticnation, was whenever Nameless was gone, who are they going to pick up? Another player was actually from Rise. Apathy says, you know what, I like the TK guys, I've been on the team before. I'm going to join the team along with those guys that I've already had pretty good chemistry with in the past. So the new TK roster is now consisting of Sharp, Apathy, Theory, and Neslo. Many people think that this team had actually played together before, which actually isn't the case. Gunjar was instead of Theory, I believe, at Ghosts for, I'm going to say that was like X Games, I think, and they actually got a second to OG, so pretty good team. They've had some success in the past. But if you were to ask me, you know, what does TK need? I would say Slang. They need another Slayer alongside of Neslo. You know, casting over them at DC, I got a lot of, you know, opportunities to look at their playstyle. You know, they were a good team. They were not a bad team at all. I think honestly, Neslo was the main Slayer for them. Either way, I think Apathy is a great player for them to pick up. He's been argued as kind of inconsistent, which I would agree with. But whenever he's around players that he likes, players that he's, you know, comfortable with, that's when he goes off. That's whenever he starts playing like the Apathy that I've seen him play at and be a top player. And I always say this, whenever Apathy is playing his best, he is one of the best in the entire game. So with that, I think that's definitely what TK needed. Apathy needed, you know, better teammates around him, teammates that he's comfortable with, and TK needed more slang along with, you know, someone who also has chemistry with them. Perfect fit. I think Apathy's definitely going to make this team better. You know, so overall, a lot of people always talk about TK picking up, you know, the same players, and I think the Apathy was a definite great pickup for TK. Whenever I immediately saw that Apathy was a free agent and that Nameless could be gone, it was kind of like just fitting in the puzzle pieces. You know, Apathy goes to TK, Nameless goes to ON. It was just kind of like back and forth play, and this is exactly where I saw stuff happening at. So really happy for the TK squad. This is definitely something that they needed to happen, and moving forward, I think TK definitely got better, and, you know, in a category where they really needed it. Next team we're going to talk about is actually going to be Orbit, who also made a one-person change. The roster is now currently consisting of Happy, Facento, TCM, and now Replays in place of Accuracy. Now, a lot of people don't really know a whole lot about the Orbit roster, and I have to admit, I don't know a crazy amount about them either. You know, before Ghosts, you would have never heard of any of these players. To be quite honest with you, if you go out to Ghosts, I guarantee you probably don't know where all these players played at, including myself. I don't really know too much about them, except for the beginning of Advanced Warfare. You know, Accuracy's had a really rough AW, you know, him being unaware in the past and that leak spot being given to TCM. He was kind of out and had to sub for different teams. Accuracy's had a rough year, but granted, he was a good player. I think that Accuracy's looked at as, you know, just kind of, he's kind of overlooked in a way. I think he's pretty underrated, to be honest with you. He's more of a support-minded player, but for Orbit, from what I've seen in the past, he's been a great player for them. You know, he averages a good amount of kills. He's doing the objective work that is needed for his team to win. And I didn't really see a problem with him, to be honest. Not that I would necessarily target any other player, but apparently they needed someone, and they decided to go and pick up Replays. So I think as a great player, you know, he's going to be the main objective. He's thinking, like, he's not going to be getting as many kills as accuracy, but he's more objective-minded, which could be what the Orbit roster needs. You know, when you look at this team, you know, Happy, Facento, and TCM, like I said, you wouldn't have known these guys prior to AW, and I honestly didn't either. So I think TCM is a guaranteed guy to get kills and respawns. Happy's a great guy to get, you know, kills and search and destroy as well as respawns as well. Facento's a great leader also, but you know, Replay is kind of coming from Denial, where he had two younger players in Who Contempt, two great young players. This is a similar thing for him. You know, these guys are younger players. He's going to kind of lead these guys in a way that they might need. So people could argue, and I might argue this as well, accuracy, there was no real reason to get rid of him, but Replays could provide something that they really needed, because I'm not going to know the general specifics of their team. You know, they only know what's best for them. So hopefully Orbit did get better. Honestly, I think they could have gotten a little bit better, but we'll see what happens. Moving on to Worlds, they're going to have to pick it up in some way, and the main player that I'm looking at is definitely going to be Facento to kind of bring these guys up. Next team we have to talk about is actually going to be Epsilon. I would say Epsilon in A, but since their EU team doesn't really exist for AW anymore, I'm just going to call them Epsilon. So Epsilon's current roster now consists of Parasite, Remy, Nagafin, and Aqua. That's right. Envy actually lost half of their team in around like 10 minutes. One of those being Octane, who went to Elevate, and the other Aqua, who went over to Epsilon. You know, we'll talk about Envy in just a second actually, but Aqua really wasn't happy with the team over on Envy, and you know, once Octane left, he was kind of like, I'm out of here, I'm going to go over to Epsilon, where two of his other teammates who actually finished top 2 at Champs, they ended up getting second to Denial at COD Champs. You know, they're runners-up to COD Champs. They won a crazy amount of money, and now Aqua was with, you know, is back with his friends. He's back with Remy and Nagafin, guys he likes playing with. Also, you know, a major player that was dropped from this team in place of Aqua was actually Royalty, which I had no idea would be happening. This was by far one of the most insane changes that I saw throughout this entire roster mania. I had no idea why Epsilon decided to get rid of him. According to Parasite, they said they wanted more consistency. You know, he was one of the most consistent players that they had. I feel like whenever Epsilon would go on these crazy runs, whether it was at Dallas or the Season 3 playoffs, it was normally Royalty who was dropping a majority of the major size numbers. I think Nagafin was definitely the factor, but Royalty was always the guy that would be dropping, you know, 40, 50 kills in a respawn at times, or would go off and search and destroy. You know, their run at Season 3 playoffs was not just a fluke. It wasn't, you know, a one-time thing. The amount of teams that they beat, I mean, you look, they played Denial, they played Elevate, I think they played Envy. Maybe they didn't play Envy. I'm not actually sure if they played Envy, but they played FaZe twice, they played Optic Gaming, like, and they were up on FaZe. They were up on OG when they played them 3-1 and 3-0. So it's like, this was not a fluke. This wasn't a one-time thing for Epsilon. They're a fantastic team, and for them to realize, you know, we're going to get rid of our main Slayer to pick up Aqua, could be kind of questionable. But Parasite is going to be, obviously, he's the captain of the team for right now, and he's going to have to lead these guys. Parasite, whether you like him or you don't, he's a fantastic player in AW, and he's what you would consider a veteran, and he's a leader for this team also. So while I wasn't a fan of the Epsilon, you know, decision to kind of drop Royalty, we'll see how it works out for them. Like I said, you do have 3 out of the 4 players from TR together, Remy, Nagafin, and Aqua. The other player is actually Facento, who we just mentioned over on Orbit. So we'll see if this roster works out. I think this could be a pretty good team, but Aqua's going to have to fill that role of, you know, of what really Royalty did, which was kind of be a nuisance, which is what Aqua's pretty good in. I think their search and destroy game got a little bit better. That wasn't necessarily Royalty's special, like, you know, that wasn't his specialty, but this is Aqua, you know, Aqua's type of thing. So if you were to ask me if Epsilon got better, I'm not really sure, to be honest. We'll see how Aqua does. He's going to kind of differentiate whether they did or not. Next team we have to talk about is actually going to be Team Envy, who lost, like I said, half of their team in around 10 minutes. Octane actually left the team to go over to Elevate, who apparently, according to like Looney and whatnot, said that that wasn't actually like planned. They had actually asked Octane if he was going to leave the team. He said no. Apparently he left like a couple hours later. So that's really unfortunate for Envy, much like, and then after Octane left, Aqua also said, I'm out of here. And if you guys watched my previous videos, I said if there was one player that in my mind would be, you know, leaving Envy, it would definitely be Aqua. You know, watching their team scrims, watching them play, they always had trouble getting him online, and that's not what you want out of a player. You want to have someone who's dedicated and who wants to be with the team. And while it was, you know, hard for everybody to lose a player like Aqua, it could be a blessing in disguise for them. No, not taking anything away from Aqua, because he's a fantastic player, but you don't want to have players who aren't really like dedicated to being on the team. So this left JCap and Looney in a very precarious situation. You know, where do we go from here? What do we do now, as we only have like 1 or 2 more days to pick up players? Well, they look at a couple other teams. Gunjar recently dropped from, I believe Most Wanted, was a free agent, and Jared, who was looking for players over on TCM, never actually found players. Both of those guys were picked up. I think now their hardpoint game is a lot better. You look at Envy, they're a very aggressive team. Jared is just going to add on to that. They also, you know, Envy really relied and kind of leaned on the bow play of Octane. Now they're not going to have that player anymore. Gunjar is going to have to fill the role of Octane the best way that he knows how, because they're definitely good in this sub game. You look at you look at Looney and Jerd, they had the subs down pat. You know, JCap is more of a support type of player, and you know, Gunjar is supposed to be the main bow for them. So if Envy expects to see success at the MLG World Finals, Gunjar is the guy to watch. He's the guy that I'm going to be looking out for. You can always guarantee Jerd is going to drop pretty big numbers and also grab a lot of hardpoint captures, pushing out hills also. So like I said, if I'm looking at Envy, I'm looking at Gunjar based on how he does, is based on how I think that they will do coming into Worlds. So I don't think the Envy got better. Hate to say that, but you know, maybe we'll see a little bit of, you know, revenge coming out of Envious. They're definitely hungry to get a good placing on the board. Next team we have to talk about is actually going to be Rise Nation, who actually got a player replaced who actually went to TK. We talked about Apathy. He was now off of this team, one of the first players to make this decision to leave a roster. And in place, they picked up Aches, who's now alongside Chino, Wheats, and Burnsoff. I want to say, like, Aches isn't really a type of player you look at and say, oh, he's had a fantastic, you know, title. By no means, and he knows that. Aches is totally familiar with the fact that he has not had a good title. But if you know Aches, if you've seen him in the past, how hungry he is to win the first event and how hungry he is to win the last event, there's nothing like it. Aches is a hungry guy. He wants to win. He's, you know, a fantastic player, but in this title, he's really, really struggled. He knows that, like I said, everyone knows this has not been Patrick Price's best game ever, obviously. With the recent pickups that Rise had and Burnsoff and Apathy, I thought this team would be a lot better. You know, we did see them have certain strides at times. I believe them finishing second in MES was a good moment for them, but it wasn't the success that they probably expected out of their team. Now that Apathy leaves, where do we turn from here? They're going to pick up what they think and what they hope to be a leader in Aches. Aches is a very hungry guy, like I said. He wants to win, and that's exactly what Rise needs right now. I'm pretty sure it was like a temporary pickup. I think the Aches is a fantastic player, don't get me wrong, but he is there for leadership. He is there to get these guys going, and whenever you see Chino and Wheats and Burnsoff play, they kind of lacked that. I feel like this team wasn't necessarily like the most hyped team in the game, and Aches can provide that. He's going to provide that, you know, leadership type of role that maybe Rise will need. So in my eyes, honestly, I think that Apathy wasn't comfortable with this team. He didn't play necessarily like amazing whenever he was on this squad. He definitely let in kills. But I think this team could get better. They're going to have to grind it out. They're going to be scrimming. I hope that they're going to be scrimming a lot more. They're going to have to be if they want to be a top contender at Worlds. But don't sleep on Rise. I'm going to say that. Don't sleep on this team. I think they have the capability to be a pretty good squad, but that's all going to be toward the leadership of Mr. Aches. He's going to have to lead these guys, and you know, we'll see how they do. The next and final team that we have to talk about from you know, the Worlds type of roster mate that did go down in the top 12 teams is going to be XGN. I don't have a crazy amount to talk about XGN. They actually got rid of or one of their players, Lacefield, actually had left the team, and in place they actually picked up Felony, who was a free agent off of E6. You know, from past events, the one event that we saw Lacefield play at, he was a fantastic player for them at DC. He led in Search and Destroy KD. I believe he led in also Respawn KD. So I've been watching XGN actually play last night, and they were having a lot of struggle. You know, Kilo was trying to be motivated. He was like, guys, let's get on, let's play. Study had a little bit of trouble getting on. I think Fizzert was like really tired or something like that. So XGN, to me, they have to be motivated. This is the last major tournament of AW. This is like your last chance. And like all these teams kind of together, this is your last chance to get a team together and to get going. Like, you only have, what, you know, a month or two left of this title? You know, why don't you just grind it out? It's one thing to grind out the beginning of the game. It's one thing to grind at the end of the game. They always say it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And that's exactly what XGN is going to have to do if they expect to be a top contender. Now, do I see them winning Worlds? No. But they can still get a good finish out of them. You know, they have Study, Killa, Fizzerp, along with Felony now, and they have the capability to beat teams. But they have to be motivated. They have to get on and scrim every day. You're not going to be a team who just, you know, runs in there blindly and does well at a tournament. That will happen every once in a while. But at a tournament like Worlds, this is another level of skill. Like, you're going to have to be playing your very best, because it's not just a regular tournament. It's not just a major prize pool tournament. this is the last one of AW, and everyone is going to be motivated moving forward. Now we're going to talk about these more notable teams who aren't necessarily in the top 12. These teams will be playing through the open bracket, but I'm not going to focus on them for a crazy amount of time, just kind of tell you guys the rosters and what kind of happened to them through Roster Mania. Alright, so one of the main teams who actually announced their roster yesterday, it was actually E6, and I kind of knew this type of change ahead of time. You know, I knew they were going to pick up Exib just because of the amount of time that they had played with them. For those who don't know, Exib was previously on E6 with General, and you know, they played in the past. They were on Onslaught, the team who won, you know, a crazy amount of MESs before everyone kind of got introduced to them. But Exib's a great player. He's a great addition to this team. Alongside, he will be with Proofy, General, and John, kind of filling that role of Felony. So E6 definitely wasn't happy with their performance at what was it, at DC. I think they don't even think I think they placed like last in their pool. I don't know if they even won a series, to be honest with you. So honestly, I don't think they can get much worse than that. This was a new team. This is a completely new team. Proofy and General were previously on the team, and they had to pick up John and Felony. Now it is Exib instead of Felony. So I think E6 has the capability to be a solid team. You know, they're gonna have to grind their way out through some of these great teams that we have in the open bracket, but they have the capability to do well. But I'm definitely gonna be looking at the plays of General and also John to be going off constantly. You know, Proofy's gonna provide that little bit of leadership. You know, he's been in the game for a long time, as well as John. But you know, they're gonna have to be vocal, they're gonna have to be focused, and they're gonna have to try to grind it out over these next couple of weeks if they expect to be a top contender, you know, for the Worlds. So we're going to talk about the teams who actually didn't really have a squad for this coming tournament. First of all was TCM, who we mentioned, Jared actually going over to Envy. He dropped, what was it, Fears, Teep, and also, it was Teep, Aches, and Fears, and he actually dropped them hoping to find a group of 3 players. Never happened. TCM will not be at Worlds. Jared, the only player remaining who is also the captain, deciding to go over to Envy for this one tournament. Next team we have is actually Most Wanted, who dropped like Pac-Man. That was, I think it was like Goonjar, Ivy, and Cells, so they don't have a team anymore either, at least as far as I know. And Prophecy, also another major known organization, tried to find a group of 4, but at least they haven't announced that they have found a team yet. So kind of unfortunate for TCM, Most Wanted, and Prophecy not having a roster for Worlds. You know, very unfortunate for those, you know, whoever's involved with those organizations. So the next notable team that we're going to be talking about is actually going to be 3ZUP, who I believe also made another change. They ended up picking up Fox, but alongside Fox, it'll be Khalifa, Miyagi, and Legal, the 3 other main players for this 3ZUP lineup. As far as Fox goes, I believe he played on Lethal Gaming, who actually made it through the open bracket at DC. I think they ended up finishing like 9th through 12th, but they beat like teams, I think they beat like ON or something like that. So Lethal actually has a completely new roster, which we'll be getting to them in just a second. But you know, Fox isn't like a bad player by any means. I think he also played on DT Purple. This could be completely wrong, but he played on one of the DT teams at Season 3 relegation, I believe, as well. So he's not like not known. I think he's a pretty good player from what I've seen. He seems to be like a main slayer type of guy. So could the 3ZUP roster get a little bit better? Could they be a contender? It's very possible. I think the 3ZUP definitely needed a change, a little bit of a switch up from casting over them once, actually, at DC, one of the games they casted on main stage against Justice, which Justice went on like a crazy tear. 3ZUP had a lot of mistakes, like a lot of little mistakes that I noticed, and I was actually casting throughout the game, and I was like, you know, why didn't they do this, or why didn't they rotate back to this, you know, type of point, or why are they getting off the hard point so early? It seemed like their communication wasn't necessarily there, so maybe with the pickup of Fox, they could improve. We'll see what happens, but 3ZUP, new roster as well. Next team we have is actually going to be Lethal Gaming, who I just talked about a minute ago with like Fox, that player over there. Now have a completely new team. It's actually going to be Proto and Holler, who were previously on Vex, and Kaden and Ruiz, who were previously on TT, you know, been on E6 along with General and Exib in the past. A very good lineup in my opinion. I really like this new Lethal Gaming squad. Proto is a fantastic player. He's a great uplink player as well. You know, Holler is a very good slayer. I think he's like filled in on a couple teams. People kind of know him a little bit better. And Kaden and Ruiz, they're a fantastic group of players as well. TT was not a bad team. I believe that team was like Grizzly, and they also had another player on the squad as well. But they weren't a bad team. They were a main team that you would be looking at in the open bracket. You know, these 2 guys, half of the roster, were, you know, not someone that you messed with whenever you were in the open bracket either. So I think that Lethal has a fantastic team, to be honest. I think that they can definitely beat some of these teams that we've talked about already, you know, other notable teams as well. So we'll see how Lethal does moving forward. I think they have a pretty good roster under their hands right now. Now the final team that we're going to be talking about, I know it's finally come to an end, is Thrust. For those who don't know, Thrust Nation is now kind of like a new organization, I believe made by Keemstar. I'm not too sure about like the organization. I'm pretty sure he started it as like a community type thing, and also they do have a pro team, and they have a fantastic team. Let's just say that. So their team now consists of Lacefield, Mochilla, Fears, and Royalty. Now, if you were to ask me, did they get better? Yeah, they got better because they didn't have a team before. So, no, but Thrust has a fantastic team, to be quite honest with you. You know, Lacefield from XGN, Mochilla from ON, Fears from TCM, and Royalty coming from Epsilon. All these guys were literally the main players for their teams, whether they lost or got dropped or not. These guys are fantastic. You know, Royalty is going to be a very aggressive type of player. Lacefield is as well, and Mochilla and Fears, both bow players, are fantastic players, to be honest. Thrust, if they do not come out of the open bracket and make it to the group stages against the main teams, I would be very surprised. You know, whether their chemistry will be there or not, they're a group of fantastic players, and I definitely think that they are one of the best teams that we have right now out of the, you know, the pool play type of team. So really looking forward to see how Thrust plays, and you know, hopefully they'll stay together moving forward. You know, whether or not they'll stay in an organization for competitive or not, I'm not really sure, but you know, Keem definitely has a pretty good roster under his hands right now. So one player who didn't actually find a team, it's really unfortunate, was actually Teep. Teep was dropped from TCM along with Aches and Fears, and unfortunately never found a team. I'm pretty sure that he's going to be casting at Worlds. You know, if Teep doesn't have a team, it's like they always look to him. If he gets like dropped out of a tournament early, they're like, "Hey, Teep, you want to come and cast, man?" Because he's a fantastic caster. He knows about the game, fantastic voice, knows everything about the game as well, and also a very good veteran in the scene. So I think that Teep will most likely be casting at Worlds. He has an opportunity to kind of relax and just kind of, you know, reflect on Black Ops 3. He's got a big game in front of him as well. So that will finally do it for all of the roster mania that has happened with these top teams, with the other notable teams. That is it. We went over every single thing that has happened, at least that I focused on. I'm sure there were other stuff that I probably didn't mention that, you know, wasn't as major, but I tried to focus on everything that we had talked about in the past. So if I did miss anything, I do apologize. But last thing, if I were to kind of talk about a team who I think got better through all of roster mania, I would say Elevate that got the best. I think Elevate is a major top contender now with the pickup of Octane. That's just going to make their roster even stronger than it already was. And I'm not going to talk about Elevate because we already did, but fantastic lineup, really happy about that team, and that will finally conclude all the roster mania for Worlds. So guys, thank you so much for watching all of the videos that I've made, you know, the entire series. I really do appreciate it. The pre-Worlds roster mania. You guys have been so helpful, so thankful, and I'm so thankful, and you guys have been so supportive, and I cannot tell you guys how much that means to me as well. So that's going to finally do it for this roster mania. If you guys did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and make sure to subscribe if you guys are new. I apologize if the video is too long. It probably is, but you know, there's no way of me shortening all of this either. So guys, without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in another video. Have a great day. Until next time, peace out.